Okay, it's time for a movie review. Blood Diamond, 2006, directed by Edward Zyck, and the cast in the lead roles: Leonardo di Caprio, and he plays Danny Archer. He's a smuggler from Zimbabwe or South African origin. The film is set in Sierre Leone. Then we got Jimon Hunsao, who plays Solomon Bendy. He's a fisherman. He works in the diamond mines, sometimes at gunpoint. And then we have Maddie, a reporter, played by Jennifer Connelly, an American journalist who's there to expose the West's exploitation of this part of the world for wealth and its healthy profits. And basically the fisherman finds a stone one day, an epic stone, a pink stone, which draws in the other two. That's the basic plot. I watched this around about the time it was released, and I'll be honest, I wasn't that impressed with it. Apologies for the extremely excessive noise here, but maybe this time around it'll be a bit different. And slight hesitancy is because I am trying to find just when I watched this movie, and once again it's a little bit lacking in information. Okay, never mind. The opening frames, we witness the fisherman waking up in the morning with his family and his wife. There's an exchange in a foreign language. I got the subtitles, but they only put the subtitles up for the English that was spoken between father and son. Convenient now. Then there's a quaint exchange between father and son as he goes with his son to the school, and the boy really loves school. And then their sort of shared love really is broken when we hear two jeeps full of men coming down the road, and this provokes the fisherman and his son to flee in haste. Some more info that I gathered up from Wikipedia. Okay, a political action thriller, and it's set in Sierra Leone when there's a civil war. The civil war in Sierra Leone took place between 1991 and 2002. The country's torn apart by the struggle between government loyalists and insurgent forces. It portrays many of the atrocities of war, the rebels' amputation of civilian hands to discourage them from voting in upcoming elections. the film's ending, in which a conference is held concerning blood diamonds, restores to a historic meeting that took place in Kimberley, South Africa in 2000. It led to the development of the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme, which sought to certify the origin of rough diamonds in order to curb the trade in conflict diamonds. However, this scheme has been mostly abandoned and is ineffective. Okay, that was an interesting score by James Newton Howard, very ethnic and what other aspects could I suggest? Yeah, he won the Soundtrack of the Year award at the 2008 Classic Brit Awards for the soundtrack. It was not much else to say about it at this juncture. So he attempts, Solomon that is, to get back to his village. He knows that these are rebel forces and they were out to impose themselves on the local population. There's an election and they want to win, and so they believe that the village is likely to vote for the government, and so they indiscriminately kill women and amputate the right hand of many of the men to prevent them from voting. Solomon is captured and witnesses this, and it gives you some indication of the degree of violence in this country at that particular time. Very, very blunt, to say the least, the footage of this punishment for voting for the government. We then get a brief look at the politics. The screen flashes between guys in white suits in the US who basically control the industry with the help of the government in Sierra Leone, and then we get the rebel forces who are basically fighting to retain the mineral for their own purposes, but they're selling the fact that they are going to help the locals by retaining the diamonds for the benefit of the population. It's a typical sort of scenario that exists when America particularly, who are the biggest customers, are trying to control money, commodities outside their own borders. Nothing really changes. But interesting to see this again. Solomon has now become a slave, sifting the river for diamonds. We witness the guy in charge spots another slave trying to secretly hide a diamond, small one that he's found. He spotted. The commander tells him to hand it over, which he does, and then he's immediately shot in the head. Yeah, life is cheap. Danny DiCaprio's character arrives with his sort of pseudo Afrikaan accent, but he's pretty powerful presence immediately as he sort of out-psychs one of the rebel leaders who isn't the boss but feels that he's now in a position of power, and starts pushing his weight about with Danny, who's been well established in this crooked business, and manages to move himself into a position where his confidence enables him to be at least an equal with these murdering scum. We then learn that he's saying or pretending he's a National Geographic journalist. That's his sort of ID, so to speak. Which enables him to go about his brokerage relatively free with his fake paperwork. As Solomon's sifting through the river, he finds quite a large stone. He thinks if he can hide it, he might be able to escape this hell. He's frisked by the leader of the rebel group, but then there's an attack by government forces that distracts them, and Solomon manages to hide the diamond before being arrested by the government forces. He's working for the rebels, of course, even though he's a slave. So as far as the government concerned, he's the opposition, he's the enemy. So he's whisked off in a wagon. Just before this, Danny gets arrested. He's also trying to smuggle some diamonds under the skin of a goat. But he's caught red-handed again by the government forces. Not a lot of honesty going on here. Solomon, Danny, and the rebel sort of leader all end up in the same sort of station, and a row breaks out between the leader and Solomon over this pink diamond, which of course Solomon denies having. Danny witnesses this, and he sees it from the perspective where there's some smoke, there must be some fire. So therefore he sees this as a possible association that he could develop or get into as they are likely to come across each other. As part of the let's try and put in some scenes that are quite uncomfortable. Danny then, after getting released, of course, he ends up in the hotel, and he decides to remove a diamond that he's got drilled into his tooth. He pulls it out with some pliers. Amazing what one will do for some money. The problem with the movie is that it's difficult to work out who the good guys are, probably because there aren't any good guys. You know, the corrupt government, the rebel forces, the individuals, of course, archers just in it to screw at anybody so you could get a piece of the action. Then we meet Connolly's character, who's a reporter who wants a juicy story, so probably prepared to sell a body for that. Or the only one that seems to have any sort of semblance of goodness about him is Solomon, who, having got out of the prison pen, is now trying to work out who might be interested in him, who was in prison. Very interesting scene followed after Solomon and Danny come face to face again. Solomon running off. Then a raid happens on a village, and Solomon's son, who's one of a group, taken away, and the commander is then seen to be basically creating child soldiers by giving them the strength to not tolerate parental abuse, and he creates a sort of, I guess, very similar to what the Hitler Youth would have done, where young boys, really, who are far too young to be considered as, potential soldiers, are recruited and given that assertive sense of self-belief that would easily and quickly generate total sort of loyalty to the commander. And there's a really unsatisfactory incident where the boys are blindfolded and one is given a machine gun, and he is bullied by the commander into firing, and he's of the belief that he's firing at nothing, and when he takes his blindfold off, there's a dead man on the floor, and it's very powerful. I like the fact that the movie is mirroring the reality at that particular time. Although it's a movie, certain aspects of it are very much on the nail with regard to what was actually taking place in Sierre Leone at that time. And I like these sort of movies where there's a strong script which walks side by side with reality. Okay, the characters are different, they've got different names, different identities, but the web that connects them all could be just as easily connected in real life way back then. And I see the connection far clearly now than when I first watched this movie, which would be the best part of 18 years ago. The cinematography is quite strong when we witness the urban warfare. Alongside that, of course, the coming together of Solomon and Danny, who are now sort of as one, sort of trying to survive. The government forces haven't taken over, and he's a little bit predictable. So the triangle, Connolly's contacts enable Solomon to go to where the refugee camp is, where he believes, where it's likely his wife and children are. Archer, of course, is got the promise of the diamond, and we have a very emotional scene when Solomon spots his wife, who then tells him that their son has been taken as a child soldier, which we saw earlier, and life in Sierre Leone. And on top of that, Connolly tells Solomon that the authorities suspect that some of the refugees are rebels, and so they're not going to release any of them from the camp until there's a ceasefire. So he's not going to be reconciled with his wife either. So the three of them set off to search for this diamond in the middle of the jungle somewhere, and en route, of course, incidents involving the rebels lead to lots of gore and lots of death and lots of close scrapes, and then there's this rather corny scenario when the rebels come across the group, and Connolly's character manages to get them in front of the camera, which alleviates their desire to murder the lot of them. It's all a bit corny. We then follow Archer and Connolly's character and Solomon as they approach a so-called centre, a rehabilitation centre for child soldiers who have become mentally disturbed by being forced to do unquestionable evil things. And also at the centre are those who have been brutalised, such as by having their limbs removed for one reason or another. This again is to make clear the historical record regarding the war in Sierra Leone at this time. The script then meanders towards Archer and Connolly's character as they give a sort of historical description of the impact war had on them. For Archer, he was stationed in Angola with the South African Army, which was a mix of white and black. And he points out that they worked alongside, and so there's no place for apartheid. And then contrastly, we hear from Connolly's character as she describes the impact of PTSD on her father after his return from Vietnam, but also on a political sort of level. Archer points out that the so-called let's take care of the poorer nations by the West is a complete hypocrisy, and that they're after the diamonds or the ivory or the gold or the oil. So the little touches of politics in this film read a little bit like a history lesson, and so should be acknowledged whilst watching them as a sort of entertaining spectacle. Well, yeah, it's a long way from being that. One note about this scene where Archer and Maddie got away. Archer and Maddie are sharing personal experiences. We then get on to how Archer's parents were murdered in a despicable fashion. Of course, we're not quite sure why, other than the fact that the scene is memorable in as much that we actually see some pretty impressive acting by DiCaprio
he's able to give a strong emotional aspect to the words that he says, and it highlights what a great actor he is. The plot becomes very shaky at this point, almost corny to the ridiculous, as Archer, with the aid of Mandy's distraction, manages to get hold of some weapons, and then he and Solomon are going to go into the bush, even though the area at that particular where they are is extremely volatile and there's an extreme risk of being caught up in the shootings, but nevertheless, this is Hollywood for you. To generate added sort of interest after a sleepy phase, Archer and Solomon are out in the jungle diving for cover in the dead of the night when the rebels pass through with their noisy music, and then of course he spots what he believes to be his son and shouts out, which attracts attention, and then of course there's a hail of gunfire in the direction of where the sound came from. It's all really quite unbelievable. Okay, there are now two of them searching for this diamond. Eventually they squabble. They realise that they've got to help each other. Solomon wants to find his son. Archer delivers a typical line that he'll help him, he knows where he is, it's all pie in the sky stuff. And then they reach a sort of a point above the river where Solomon says that's where he's put the diamond, and Archer, who's still working at the behest of the colonel, telephones and gives GPS coordinates to attack the area, to clear it so that he can then go down and get the diamond. Solomon's concerned that maybe his son is amongst the rebels who are down by the river resting, but this is Hollywood, isn't it? It's very weak, this script now, very weak. So I'm not going to tell you the ending, you worked it out, but let's pose a few questions. Do they find the diamond? Do they rescue Solomon's son, who actually gets the diamond? Who dies? There's a showdown. There's very much a typical sort of scenario that's played out when we have a huge carrot for the winner, meaning the diamond. And remember the good, the bad and the ugly, the reward. So, okay, not a bad film, but lost its way in the last third, it has to be said. That's my review anyway. Blood Diamond from 2006. Oh yeah, and it's postscript really. Right at the end of this movie there's a sort of political theme that's returned to, and a highly sort of unbelievable set of scenes involving Solomon, involving diamonds, involving wealth, etc., etc. Your imagination can run riot, and then watch it.